A woman is gliding down a corridor, her presence glowing in a gold-tinted hue. She's carrying the tools of her trade, a beaker in her hand and a mortar and pestle around her neck. The alchemist is wearing long, flowy robes, and her hair is swirling up towards the starry sky. This piece is called The Call by surrealist artist Remedios Varo. She was known for her otherworldly paintings of strong female characters, often drawing resemblance to herself as a way of emphasizing her perspective as a woman. She hardly ever painted direct self-portraits, but instead painted her alter egos of herself in witty, ethereal, and androgynous ways. Varo was a self-studied alchemist and naturalist, and strived to inspire individual balance in what she believed was an interconnected universe. Even though she showed to be a competent painter already from a young age, it wasn't until she escaped World War II, found a home in Mexico, and finally became free from poverty that she managed to find success. Hello and welcome to another video in my series called A Brief History of Female Artists. In this video we'll be talking about surrealist artist Remedios Varo. I'll go over her life and talk about some of her most important works. Remedios Varo was born in 1908 in Spain. Her father was a hydraulic engineer and encouraged Varo's artistic talent by letting her copy his technical prints he created for work. She got to practice drawing straight and consistent lines by doing this, and this continued to inspire her artworks even in the future, as machines and engineering are themes in much of her work. Her father also gave her books about occultism and mysticism, which just spurred on her interest for the mystical. She also read books by authors Jules Verne, Alexandre Dumas, and Edgar Allan Poe. Just like many other women at this time, Varo was brought up with religious values and taught how to act as a proper young lady. This only egged on her rebellious nature, and Varo ended up rejecting the religious ideology of her childhood and chose instead to focus on progressive ideologies instilled on her by her father. Already at 15 years old, Varo was accepted into a renowned art academy in Madrid. This academy was known for its strict schooling of the old masters, and they often rejected new ideas. The same year that Varo began, artist Salvador Dalí, that you might have heard of, was expelled. But Varo took advantage of the technical skills and techniques that she was taught at the academy, and she also took interest in paintings by Hieronymus Bosch and Francisco de Goya. Both of these artists often featured imaginary and dreamlike, or even nightmare-like, imagery. Goya, also having been from Spain, often used political critique in his artworks, critiquing Spain and the wars he had to live through. Varo met her husband Gerardo Lizarga at this art academy, and after they married, Varo gained a whole new independence, and she was now able to leave her family, and the couple moved to Paris and then later on Barcelona. The couple separated in 1937, but actually remained friends afterwards. During this time, Varo met Esteban Frances, a political activist and artist. She also met Benjamin Perret, a poet. Perret and Varo ended up as romantic partners, and the two of them ended up sharing a studio together with Esteban Frances in Paris. In Paris, she got by working odd jobs and even forging paintings. Perret was friends with André Breton, the founder of the surrealist movement, and Varo was introduced to the surrealist circle of artists in Paris. These artists were Leonora Carrington, Max Ernst, Dora Maar, just to name a few. The surrealist movement was characterized by their interest in the bizarre. They wanted to paint the images that they saw in their dreams, and there was also a focus between merges between humans, animals, and machines. Many artists were also inspired by fairy tales and mythology, like for instance artist Leonora Carrington. Carrington and Varo ended up being lifelong friends and inspiring each other's work. I have a whole video about Carrington for anyone who's interested. The surrealist movement did not have the greatest view on women. Even though surrealism was groundbreaking and progressive, they still thought that women were not able to be real artists. They were often seen as just muses for the male artists. Varo did not create much original artwork during this time, and how women were not being taken seriously as artists might have been one of the reasons why. She has said herself, "Yes, I attended those meetings where they talked a lot and one learned various things. Sometimes I participated with works in their exhibitions. I was not old enough, nor did I have the aplomb to face up to them, to a Paul Eluard, a Benjamin Perret, or an André Breton. I was with an open mouth within this group of brilliant and gifted people. I was together with them because I felt a certain affinity. Today I do not belong to any group. I paint what occurs to me, and that is all." Varo has also spoken more generally about her time in Paris, and it seemed to have been a time of poverty and hardships for her. "It's not easy to live on painting in Paris. Sometimes I did not have more food in an entire day than a small cup of coffee with milk. I call this the heroic epic. The bohemian life that is supposed to be necessary for the artist is very bitter." During this time, Varo painted the souls of the mountain. The female figure taking center stage was a trademark for Varo, and in this painting we see heads of women emerging from slender volcanic mountains. The translucent veil blowing between them indicates active forces deep within the mountains. The heads shown in this painting bear a certain similarity to Varo, and she's really speaking a lot about herself and her own experiences here. In this painting she used a technique known as fumage. It was a surrealist technique developed by Wolfgang Paulin, where you use a candle flame to leave sooty marks on the canvas. Varo enjoyed these kinds of experimental techniques, and by interacting with the painting in this way, Varo is implementing more of herself into the piece. She was very interested in the occult and alchemy, and she felt very connected to the power of the candlelight. The alchemical union of opposites dictate that one cannot exist without its other, meaning like darkness cannot exist without light, strength cannot exist without weakness, and so on. And using fumage to create the swirling clouds, Varo is talking about how everything is connected. Varo's life during this time was a time of being overshadowed by male artists, financial troubles and political unrest, and here she's depicting herself as rising through the volcano. Even though she might be dormant now, her time will come. Perret was arrested at the beginning of World War II because of his political opinions. Varo was arrested as well for being his romantic partner. Whilst little is known of what actually happened to her during this time, one friend has described Varo as being extremely distraught after she was released. After she was released, she had to flee. The Germans were entering Paris, and she and Perret escaped to Mexico, who had opened up their borders for people escaping the war. Once in Mexico, Varo took on a variety of different jobs. She was hand-painting furniture, restoring pre-Columbian artifacts, and working in commercial design. In 1952, Varo married Walter Gruen, an Austrian political refugee. He was quite secure, financially, which allowed Varo to spend even more time perfecting her art practice. She also became friends with other European artists who had fled to Mexico because of the war. This included artists Leonora Carrington, Katie Horna, and Gunther Gerzo. Carrington came to be a very close friend to Varo, and the two would collaborate on stories they wrote together, influence each other's artworks, and share ideas about mysticism and occultism. The two of them, as well as artist Katie Horna, actually became known as the Three Witches for a period of time. Varo was actually very superstitious and surrounded herself with crystals and oddly shaped pieces of wood that she thought had magical qualities. One of the many paintings she painted during this time in Mexico was the creation of birds. In the painting we see a bird-like creature. Resembling an owl, we can infer that the creature is a symbol for wisdom. He's crafting smaller birds at its work table. The tool it's holding in its hand is connected by a string to a violin placed inside its chest. And light shining from the moon and stars outside is beaming onto the small bird through what looks like a triangular magnifying glass, which seems to give life to the bird. The scene bears resemblance to common myths of creation, yet the image is unique and original. Maybe she's talking about herself as an artist. The tool the owl creature is holding resembles a paintbrush with a palette of paint next to it, which might be a nod to the power artists have to create something out of nothing. How artists can create life by just putting paint to canvas. In any way, Varo is creating her own creation myth with this image. She's bringing up imagery that's already familiar to us. The religious themes are similar to Michelangelo, but she puts her own creativeness and uniqueness into it. There's something dark and mystical to this image that makes us want to study it further. Another painting I want to discuss is called Starcatcher. A huntress has captured the moon and is now carrying it in a cage. In her other hand, she is carrying a butterfly net, which is implied to be the tool with which she managed to capture the moon, and her dress is billowy and exquisite. The moon is related to pagan goddess Diana the Huntress. She was the protector of women and goddess of the moon, and Varo is specifically talking about femininity in this painting. Even though we can hardly make out the shape of the woman's figure underneath her dress, the billowy garment does kind of resemble female genitals, and we can almost glimpse of what lies inside. Surrealism and sexual imagery was quite a common combination, but here Varo is using those themes and presenting them in a non-sexualized way. She's also talking about feminine power. The way the painting is painted resembles a Renaissance portrait, and the interior could be the foyer to a palace. The woman holding the moon is in a position of power, and what exactly she intends to do with the moon from here on out is not specified. There's a tension between the huntress and the captured moon, again bringing up the interplay between opposites. Varo ended up being quite successful. She held her first individual exhibition in 1955, which was met with positive acclaim, and in 1958 she held her second one. She got so popular in Mexico that people had to be put on waiting lists to receive her artworks. But at the height of her career, Varo unexpectedly passed away in 1963 due to a heart attack. She was only 54, but by the time of her death, she had created over 300 artworks. Poet Octavio Paz described Varo's artworks as if she painted with her eyes rather than with her hands. Remedios sweeps the canvas clean and heaps up clarities of its transparent surface. Today Varo is remembered as one of the greater Mexican surrealist artists, and I wonder what would have happened if she didn't pass away so soon. She has been an inspiration to other female artists over the decades, and her way of showing a female perspective through her artworks will continue to inspire female artists worldwide. And this is all we have time for today. If you like this video, please do give it a like and subscribe, and I will see you again soon. Bye!